I had this really quite strange experience the other day. I was trying to focus, write this important email, and my body was definitely there, fingers on the keyboard, everything. But like the actual me wasn't there at all. My attention was just completely hijacked, gone. Thinking about some stupid mistake I made last week, or planning this conversation I haven't even had yet. Physically present, mentally just absent.
Yes. You stumbled right into what you could call the silent epidemic of our time, really. We mistake all that internal chatter, that mental noise, for our actual mind. And in that state, you're absolutely right. You're not really thinking. It's more like you're being thought. The worries, the replays, the projections, they just take over.
That distinction feels huge. Being thought. And the sources we looked at, they all seem to point the finger at attention. We tend to think of it as, I don't know, a tool, something we use. But this deep dive suggests it's more like this invisible puppeteer running the whole show of our reality.
That's a great way to put it. And the really tricky part is if you try to look at attention itself, pay attention to attention. You hit this weird wall, has no form, no color, you can't pin it down. It's the lens, the pure seeing, but not something seen.
Right, that glitch.
Yep.
It proves it's the lens, not an object in the frame.
Exactly. And if you don't get that distinction that it's the process, not a thing, well, the trap's already sprung. You're caught.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How does this lens actually construct a reality where we end up feeling so lost so often? We have to start with Gestalt, right? The figure ground thing.
Absolutely. Gestalt psychology is really the bedrock here. The fundamental idea is that we don't just passively soak up reality, we actively build it, moment by moment. It's this constant dance between what stands out, the figure, and everything else, the ground. Think about us talking now. Our voices, they're the figure. But the quiet between words, maybe the hum of the equipment, the feeling of the room around us, that's all the ground.
And if, say, a loud bang happens outside?
Instantly, that becomes the figure. Our words fade into the background. Your attention just snaps to it automatically. No conscious decision needed. Perception is always structured like this. But here's where it gets, well, a bit dangerous, based on what we're exploring about attention. The figure doesn't just grab your focus for a second. It often is, it colonizes you.
Colonizes. That word choice. It's not just occupying space. It's like taking over the government, changing your identity.
Precisely. That's the crucial difference between, say, having a feeling of stress and contracting around it to become a stressed person. Or, experiencing a failure versus collapsing into the identity of, I am a failure. The figure swallows the ground, and in that moment, it rewrites who you think you are.
That makes so much sense of, a lot of modern anxiety, like that social media example we talked about. You're scrolling, you see someone's perfect vacation photo. Instantly, that image becomes this overwhelming figure, and poof, the ground your own life, the warmth of your hands, your breath, everything real right now, it just vanishes.
And you're left utterly contracted, stuck in this tiny sliver of reality where the only story playing is I'm lacking something or I'm falling behind. That total collapse of the wider field, that intense narrowing, that's possession, really, not perception. The story, the figure, is composing you instead of you drawing from the whole field.
But why? Why does our attention snap to the negative so readily? It feels counterproductive if we're supposedly wired for survival or happiness.
Well, it's because attention tends to follow patterns, and historically those patterns were often linked to pain or threat or something unresolved that needed watching. Survival stuff. The nervous system is kind of wired for familiarity, for scanning for the problem, rather than objectively seeing what's true or whole right now. So if there's an old wound, a belief about not being good enough, a gap, the attention spotlight gets trained on that. Because weirdly, that painful familiarity feels safer to the system than the unknown vastness of the present.
So the spotlight isn't looking for joy, it's looking for the familiar groove, even if that groove is a ditch.
Exactly. And modern life advertising, algorithms, even some aspects of culture has gotten incredibly good at exploiting this. They know how to create a figure, a sense of lack, an external desire. And boom, your attention contracts, the ground disappears, and you're much easier to influence. That constant mental replay of the mistake from 5 years ago, that's not helpful reflection. It's re-triggering. It's running an old, painful program.
Okay. So if we recognize we're caught in this contraction, this hypnotic loop, what's the practical way out? How do we consciously find the ground again?
It often starts with a very simple, deliberate shift, a physical gesture of attending. Like the hand experiment you mentioned. Try it now if you like. Look at your hand. But don't just see it as my hand or a tool. Really attend to its presence. The lines, the texture, the light, maybe even the subtle warmth or pulse.
Yeah, I can feel that. The mental chatter about the email, the argument I was replaying, it definitely recedes. It doesn't vanish, but the volume drops. The urgency fades.
That's the opening. That's the crack in the hypnosis. When you truly attend to the raw isness of something, the figure, the label, the story, the worry attached to it, it loses some of its magnetic pull. You start to sense that the hand or the thought or the feeling is appearing within something larger, within awareness. And that awareness isn't limited to the hand or the thought.
This feels like it moves us into that Gestalt field theory idea, looking not just at the thing, but the whole context it appears in.
Yeah.
The canvas, not just the paint.
Precisely. Nothing exists on its own. Everything arises from and is part of this dynamic, interconnected field of awareness. Like a wave isn't separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself in that form. If you forget the ocean, if you forget the ground, your perception collapses. You start treating the wave, the thought, the feeling, as if it's the whole reality. A fragment mistaken for the whole.
Let's make that really concrete. Maybe ask listeners to recall a moment of frustration. Getting cut off in traffic, a difficult interaction. Feel that tension, identify the figure, the story of injustice, the heat in the chest.
Right. Hold that figure gently. Now, consciously widen your attention. Don't try to push the frustration away, just broaden the focus. Notice the sounds in the room around the feeling. Feel the actual physical space behind your eyes. Notice the sensation of your body sitting, the contact points. Maybe even listen for the silence between your heartbeats.
And doing that, the structure becomes kind of obvious, doesn't it? The frustration needs the space to exist. It can't scream in a vacuum.
Exactly. The figure absolutely depends on the ground for its very appearance, but the ground, that spacious awareness, it doesn't depend on the figure at all. Awareness remains whole, open, untouched, even when the figure, the thought storm, is absolutely convinced the world is ending.
Which highlights that huge mental trap. This relentless drive for closure.
Yeah.
We hate unfinished stories, open loops. We desperately want to resolve the frustration, figure out why they did that, replay what we should have said.
Yes. And the core mistake is believing that thinking more about it will bring closure. You're trying to solve an emotional bodily contraction with your intellect, like trying to untie a knot by just staring at it harder. You're trying to fix the figure, change the wave. But the real issue wasn't the wave itself, it was the collapse of the field, forgetting you're the ocean. True closure often comes not from endlessly analyzing the story, but from returning attention to the vastness, the ground. Letting the wave just be a wave, knowing it will naturally subside back into the ocean.
So that whole idea of I need to control my thoughts or manage my attention better, it might actually reinforce the problem.
Yeah.
Because it keeps the focus on me, the controller, the spotlight operator, who's apparently doing it wrong.
It often can, yes. It keeps you identified with the efforting, with the figure of the one who needs to manage. This leads us to something deeper, what you call the ontological relocation. The real liberation, the sources suggest, isn't about changing the content playing on the screen. It's about realizing who or what is aware of the screen in the first place. There's this principle, isomorphism, which sounds complex, but it basically means your inner world mirrors how you perceive the outer world. If your attention is always fragmented, contracted, focused on lack, your inner experience becomes fragmented and lacking. You become the world you habitually perceive.
But hang on, a lot of mindfulness practices talk about observing thoughts.
Yeah.
If I just observe my anxiety without trying to fix the why behind it, isn't that just avoiding the problem? Like, if I'm the sky, why bother with the storm? Doesn't seem very practical if the storm is, ruining my day.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it points to why simple observation can sometimes feel unsatisfying or incomplete. If you're observing the thought from the same level of consciousness that generated the thinker, watching the thinker, thinking it's still kind of loop, you're still caught in the figure-ground dynamic, just maybe one step removed, still identified, just as the observer.
So what's the real shift? The deeper relocation.
It's moving from observing the content, the anxiety, the thought, the story, to recognizing the container, the awareness itself. That's the ontological relocation. So instead of thinking, I notice I am anxious, which still centers the I within the anxiety, the shift is towards recognizing, anxiety is appearing in awareness. The I gently disengages from the feeling and relocates to the space in which the feeling is happening. You shift from being the storm or even just watching the storm from the ground to realizing you are the sky. The vast, unchanging sky in which all weather patterns, including storms, arise and pass.
And the sky doesn't need fixing. It doesn't need managing. It's already whole.
Precisely. And this flips the script on presence. It's not some special state you have to struggle to achieve. Presence is actually our default state. It's what's left when we stop identifying with the fleeting figures, the thoughts, the emotions. You don't become present. You remember presence by letting go of the belief that you are, the thought or the feeling. You realize the field of awareness isn't something you have, it's fundamentally what you are, prior to the name, the story, the problem.
Okay. So we've relocated. We're resting as this silent sky, the witness. Is that it? Is that the end goal? Or is there maybe something even prior to that structure?
It's crucial to push even beyond the witness, because subtly the idea I am the witness or I am awareness can become another figure, another identity, albeit a very spacious one. It's still a concept, a thought arising within the field, a beautiful, perhaps liberating thought, but still a thought passing through.
So what's left? If even the witness identity drops away. The screen analogy feels really potent here. Like, you're not the movie, not the characters, not even the detached observer watching the movie. You're the screen itself.
Yes. The screen, utterly untouched, unaffected by whatever drama plays out on it. It doesn't care if it's a tragedy or a comedy. It's just the space for it all. And the final figure that needs to dissolve, perhaps, is the seeker. The identity of, I am the one who is trying to become aware, or I need to get free. That subtle sense of being a separate self on a journey. That's the last, most refined layer of the illusion.
Which brings us to that concept of not two, that the witness, the figure, the ground, they aren't actually separate things interacting. There's no real inside and outside. There's just this seamless happening.
Exactly. And the realization dawns. The prison was never the thoughts themselves. It was the deeply ingrained belief that you were identical to them and therefore needed to escape from them. The chains were forged from attention, from that contracted identification. And that attention, that light of consciousness, was never really yours to control in the first place. It just is.
Wow. So the person who comes back to their life after really grasping this, they're fundamentally different from the one who started the inquiry. Thoughts might still arise, emotions will still flow, but they're seen as visitors. Weather patterns passing through the vast sky of being, not existential threats to finding who you are.
It's the quiet falling away of the need for completion, for resolution at the level of the story. You realize the pattern was never truly broken, just perceived as such through the lens of contracted attention. You're not becoming free. You're remembering the freedom that was always already here, obscured by the identification with the figure.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought. Something to sit with maybe beyond the words.
Yes. If the figure collapses, the ground dissolves back into itself, the thoughts are seen as appearances, and even the witness identity is recognized as another costume. What remains? What is absolutely prior even to awareness noticing itself? What breathes beneath the entire field? Don't try to think your way to an answer. Don't look for a concept. Just let the question itself work on you. Let it hollow you out a little. And perhaps feel the answer in the silence and the not knowing.